What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dev Marketer channel. Today we are going to be working on another episode of the Advanced Blog and CMS. Now, today's video, as I mentioned in the previous one, is going to focus around the admin navigation. As you can see here, our goal here is to basically highlight the correct navigation item for whatever page we're currently on. That's the kind of goal that we want to set up. This is something actually people ask me about quite often, how to handle this. I'll show you guys how to do it today. So basically, if we click on Manage Users, it takes us to this page, Manage Users. It's manage/users. And our goal here is we want this to be shown that it's currently active so that the user, when they're on this page, they know they're on that Manage Users page. It's basically going to indicate which page they're on. You can see we got our drop-down working now. If we go to Roles, we're now in the roles page. The goal would be to highlight this roles and permissions to show that we're in it, and we want this option to be open by default. Okay, so that's kind of the goal of today's video, is we want to handle this automatic determination of what page we're currently on, so that we don't need to worry about it going forward. So let me show you guys how that works. It's actually going to be pretty easy. We're going to be pulling in a package that I have written, devmarketer/Laravel Easy Nav. You guys can find this package. You're welcome to use it. I believe this makes navigation super easy in Laravel. Now, I actually built this package because I have been building these scripts for a long time and have been basically enhancing them over time to work with my navigation. So the goal was I was basically creating these rules for navigation, and every navigation element, I put in this rule saying, like, if the URL fits this criteria or something, then make this navigation item the active navigation item. And so I created all these rules. I've been enhancing these files and these functions for a while. And eventually I realized I'm using this in literally every project. Every Laravel project I do, I end up pulling these in because every Laravel project has a menu and every Laravel project needs this functionality. And so instead of copying and pasting the code, which is what I was doing before between my projects, I figured this way I should just pull it out into a package. Not only can other people use it, but it actually makes my life easier because as I enhance the package and add new methods and stuff like that, I don't need to copy and paste it into old projects. Instead, I can just do a composer update now and get those new functions. So it's going to be really nice for me. Good for you guys. So anyway, this is the package, Laravel Easy Nav, and that's what we're going to be using today. So if you scroll down to the README, you can see basically you just run composer require devmarketer/EasyNav. Let's go ahead and copy that, paste it into our terminal here, and bring this in. Okay, so you can see it came in pretty quick. You can also see devmarketer EasyNav is auto-discovered. This does support Laravel 5.5 auto-discovery, so we don't need to do anything further. It's installed. Of course, if you're using an older version, you're going to want to follow step number 2 to define the alias and the providers. Okay, this is going to create an alias called nav, and this is how we're going to define our rules. And so the whole point of this package basically is we go into our navigation and we're going to define a rule for every line of navigation. You're going to define a rule that tells Laravel basically when this item should be active. Now, there's several rules we can use in order to determine that, but you'll use whichever one's appropriate. So, and then if it is valid, if the URL we're currently at is correct based on those rules, then it's going to go ahead and add some sort of active class to that element, which is going to highlight it, and you can customize how it's highlighted in its CSS, right? So it's actually a very simple project. We do have a basic configuration file we need to pull in step 3. So let's go ahead and pull that in. Just go into Composer, paste that code in. It's going to create a configuration file, and we should have this configuration file now at EasyNav. Now, the only thing that's in the configuration file as of right now is determining your active or your default active class. So this is the class that it will attach to the navigation element if that's the current page, if it dictates by the rules that that's the current page. So if you think about it, like if we go to Bulma over here, this one is highlighted blue, right? This is the active page that we're currently on. Well, it's got this is active class. Okay, so that's how we tell it that it's the active one. We give it a class of is active. If we give one of these other things a class of is active, then they'll be highlighted instead. So That's what this package is doing. Is this package, if it determines that this is the correct element, it's going to output this isActive class. And of course, you can customize that if your framework or your CSS is built differently. If it's just active, or maybe it's open, or maybe it's set to like current or something like that, you can customize the default here. So I'm just going to stick with isActive, and then we're good to go. That's all we need to do to configure it. All right, so now we can go over and let's start setting these rules in our navigation. So let's go into the navigation that we want to work with. It's under Nav Manage. And now inside of here, let's go ahead and put this together. So if we look here in the configuration file for this EasyNav, if we scroll down, you can see that there's different rules that we can do. So for example here, you can see, this is an example of how it would work. So you can see here we have a list item. We create the rule nav is route home. So this basically takes a named route. So if you want to say, hey, if we're on this specific named route, then what's going to happen is if it's on that specific named route, it's going to output the active class that you've determined for that route. If it's one of these resources like posts, this is one of the other rules we can define is like is resource. So we can say nav is resource. This is going to output it as active if we're on any of those sources, so like posts/create, posts/show, posts/delete, or whatever. If we're on any of those resources for posts, then it's going to consider that active. We also have has segment. So this is easy. Like for example, if we were in our object here, we have like manage/roles. You could say, hey, if there's a segment called roles, then go ahead and highlight this roles item. That would be another rule you could determine. And then another one is URL contains. This one you got to be really careful with, but I have it in there for some specific use cases there might be. But for example, if you wanted to say, if anywhere in the URL there is the word admin, then highlight this, you could do that. Again, be careful with this one because, for example, if you had like contacts, plural, this is still going to come back as active. So this one you got to be a little careful with, but it has its purposes for some people. These ones are going to be a little more practical. Using the named routes is really, really nice. And then the resource one is really nice as well. The other thing is all of these, you can actually put arrays. So if you want to dictate multiple things, you can do that. You'll see us put that to work here. But any of these can also work in an array. So for example, for like has segment, we can use a string or an array. And so you could say if it has the segment roles or the segment, what's the other one we have? Permissions. So we could highlight this one if it has roles or permissions, right? So either one, then go ahead and highlight it. All right, so you can do an array of however many items you want as well. So it becomes pretty powerful. It's pretty good. And so this is well documented. I would say this is very well documented, so you guys can read these. There's examples for all of these as well. And there's lots of options as well beyond the ones I've just told you here. That I'm not going to go into every detail of it. But for example, you can always pass in on any of these rules. If you want a different, you always have your default class. So in our case is active. It's whatever we set in the configuration. So if you just leave a rule without, just like normal, it's going to always add that same default class. If you ever want to override it and you ever want it to not use that on a specific use case, like this one element, we want to use a different other than the default, you can always pass in as the last parameter a different class. So in this case, you can see is resource posts is open. This is going to, instead of adding the default one, it's going to add the is open class instead of the whatever we defined as the default. Okay, so anyway, that's something to think about. It's actually pretty powerful. There's some pretty good rules in there. I kind of went over the basics, but you can actually, it's really powerful from what I've experienced as far as determining exactly the rules when an item should be considered an active menu item. All right, and then as far as styling it, all you're doing is styling that class. So in our case, we're going to add the isActive class to our menu item. So if we want to style it, you just style that menu item with that class, and that's how you configure what it looks like. So all that happens in CSS, and that's easy to manage and control. All right, that's it. Let's go ahead and do it now. So let's start defining these rules. So let's see, we got here's our dashboard up here. You can see we basically want this item to be active whenever the only time we want the dashboard to be active is when we're at this specific named route. So because this is a named route, we can actually use, let's go ahead and do it right here. So we're going to say class equals, and then we're going to add nav is route, and then we're going to give it the name of the route. So in this case, manage.dashboard. Okay, so now that's it, that's all we have to do. So now if we visit the named route, if we're ever on that named route, manage.dashboard, then this item will be active, right? So now we don't have to worry about it. We just code it once, and now it's going to automatically manage that for us. I'll give you an example. Let's go and look at it. Did I save it? I did save it. Okay. Let's go back to our project. Let's refresh. And now let's go to our dashboard. There we go. So now you can see it's active. See how it's highlighted because we're on the manage dashboard route. So now it's active. If we go to a different one, it's going to go away. Now we need to define the other rules for the rest of these, but you can see now how it works, right? And if we go get rid of this line, just to show you, let's get rid of it. Even though we're on manage dashboard now, it doesn't work, right? So that is handling all of it for us. You see how easy that was. Let's do it now for the rest of these. So class equals, let's see. So this one, manage users, we're going to want this to be active if we're using anything in the user's resource, right? So users create, users index, users show, users delete, any type of user's resource, we want it to highlight this navigation item. So what we're going to do instead of using a specific named route, we're going to use a different one, a different rule. We're going to say nav is resource. Okay, and then we're going to say users. So if it's any version of users, so any of the resource elements for users, then it will go ahead and highlight it. Let's go and take a look at that again. And then let's go to manage users. So now we're on the manage users page. Let's now create a user. Even though we're on the create user, it should stay there. See how it's there even though we're now nested inside of it. Let's go look at a user real quick. So we'll do like users 1. So here we are, we're looking at a user. See how it's still active. So if we're ever inside of this user's resource, then it's going to be active, okay? So that's how that one works. So we can edit the resource user again, and you can see that it works. Yeah, so that's working good. So once again, these are really easy to set up. That's why I love this package. That's why I wrote the package. All right, so, okay, so now let's go ahead and do the next one. So for roles and permissions, this is our top navigation element. For roles and permissions, basically, we want to check to see if we're either inside of the roles or the permissions, either one. So we're going to check for two different ones. If we're inside of either of these, then we want this top element to be active, okay? Even if it's one or the other. So we're going to check for multiple things here. So this time we're going to use a different rule. We're going to use nav has segment, and I have to remember kind of how it works. Has segment, so then we're going to give it the slugs that we're looking for, and then the segment that we're looking for. So in this case, we're going to be looking for manage / either roles or manage / permissions. So let's go ahead and do it. So we're going to pass in an array, and we're going to say roles or permissions. The second parameter, we're going to tell it which segment to search in. We're going to tell it to search segment 2. And you can pass in an array if you want to search multiple segments, but by default, just going to pass in the integer. And then, so that's the second segment, as you can see here. And then we don't need to worry about active class because we've got the configuration. So that's all we need to do. So this is what we're going to do for this one. And this one should make this element active if we're in roles or in permissions. So let's try it. Let's go to permissions, roles. So now we're inside of the roles. It should work even if we go into create a new role. So that's all works. And then permissions works, seems to work fine. So there is still a little bit of work that we need to do, and that's because of our accordion. So the way we designed the accordion, we need to tell the accordion that to search basically when the page loads, and if an item is considered active, then go ahead and open it manually. That's something that needs to happen on the JavaScript side. That's nothing to do with the plugin. The plugin's job is only to add the isActive class to the element if we're on that page. And so the way we designed the accordion, it doesn't recognize whether an element was loaded as isActive. And so that's something we're going to need to fix in this video. In fact, we're basically done with this portion of the video now, because these are just examples. I'm not going to worry about these ones. So we're basically done with the video here. And let's go ahead and fix that portion now. So what we want to do is we want to go into our JavaScript, and we want to identify whether, okay, so we load the page here. You can see that the plugin works. The plugin sees that we're in the permissions. There's a permissions segment, so it knows to make this the active navigation element. So that's working. Now what we need to do is we need to tell our JavaScript, the accordion JavaScript that we wrote yesterday, we need to tell it that if a item loads in as isActive, then we need to open up the menu, because right now it only triggers opening and closing the menu when we click on it. So we got to fix this, and that's going to happen with the JavaScript. So let's go ahead and look over there and see what we can do. So let's head over to our JavaScript that we wrote yesterday, manage.js, and let's see how we can build this. So one thing that comes to mind basically is, in fact, actually, I don't think we need to change this code. All we need to do is when we load the page, we need to go through and see if any of these items are currently active. And if they are currently active, then we're going to go ahead and set this max height up and define the max height as if we had just clicked it. That's basically what we want to do. So we're already sorting through all of the navigation elements here. So I think it just makes sense we could just do it up here before we actually set up the click event, right? So we'll just go ahead, load it up, and then set up the click event. So we'll just do that up here. So that'll make sense. So what we're going to do is we'll just say if accordions I, so if that current accordion dot class list Okay, so I had to refresh my memory here. So I went over to Mozilla Developer Network documentation here, and you can see I'm looking at the class list, and I was looking to see how I could tell if a specific class exists. So you can see there is a method here called contains. That's going to work perfect. And we can basically contain it and then say is active and see if that class has or if that element has a class is active or not. I'm assuming this is just returns a Boolean. Yeah, I would assume. Let's try it out. Okay, so if it contains, and then we are going to pass in the is active. And then if it is, I feel like there's a lot of, oh no, that looks right. Okay, so if it does have that active class, then what we're going to go through and do is we're going to grab the submenu. So we can actually do exactly what we did here. I'm trying to think, this actually might get hoisted out. We might have a problem. No, we shouldn't have a problem with hoisting. Okay, so submenu, this should work fine. And then we'll just do the same thing. We'll say submenu dot style dot max height is equal to submenu scroll height. And then we're also going to want to go through and add the margins. Okay, so what we're doing here is basically we say, hey, if we load the page up, and because by default they're all closed in our CSS, but if we load the page up and one of the accordions has the isActive class, then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and expand it just as if they had clicked it, okay? So let's try it. So let's refresh. Doesn't appear to be working, so let's check for JavaScript. Let's check for errors. We don't have errors, which is actually kind of peculiar. Oh, we're not compiling it. Rookie mistake. Rookie mistake. Let's run watch command. Now let's go ahead and try it again. Okay, so now read property of style undefined. So something's wrong with submenu. Submenu's not defined. Oh, we can't use this element. Okay, hold on. Accordions. Okay. Okay, that's why, because we don't have access to this property again. That makes sense. I just copied it out of there, but that doesn't work. So we have accordions. So let's try this now. There we go. Now it works. Okay, perfect. So that's going to work now. So now if the item is active, it's going to open up. If it's not active, these ones, see, they don't have that is active class. They're not going to open up on load. Now this should still toggle on and off just fine. So you can still close it if you wanted to. And if we wanted to add logic then we could, where this stays active. That would be a personal thing that you would want to do, but you could do that. But now if we like move to dashboard, see how it's not active, so it stays closed, right? We can open it, but it's closed on load. If we go now to roles, we would expect we have roles. Now it opens up on load. If we go to permissions, it opens up on load. So this appears to be working. So you can see here how it does all that. That's it, I guess, for today's video. So that basically accomplishes exactly what we're looking for. Now, as we add pages or as we add new navigation elements, all we do is add a new rule from our Laravel Easy Nav, and then we don't have to worry about it again. So you can see here, all we do now is just work on the project like normal. We don't really have to worry about the navigation. So we made managing the navigation super, super easy. Now, again, you guys are welcome to use this package. That's why it's out there. So if you guys have any new rules, if you have any ideas for new rules, navigation rules that you guys want to target certain navigation elements, just go ahead, leave an issue, describe what you're looking for. That's it for today's video. So next video, we're actually going to be working on a mobile navigation for this same admin thing. We'll work on a mobile navigation, make it a little bit better. We're actually going to pull this out and reposition it, do like an absolute positioning and stuff like that, and then we'll have it so we can slide it in and out, kind of like on a mobile device would work. So we're going to work on that in the next video. I'll see you guys over there.